Welcome to another episode of the Black Menaces podcast. I'm your host, Nate Bird, and I'm here with somebody a little bit different this week. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, somebody different. I'm Sebastian. You know me, I'm Sebastian, and I'm here in place of Rachel just for the ability that I have to be here. So I'm happy to be here with y'all.
Everybody knows Sebastian. He's the cute one in the boy band,
I'm the
right?
cute one.
In the group. Yeah, and then we got our guest. We got our guest, Josh Wallace. Josh, say hello to the people real quick.
What's up, fam? Josh Wallace over here. I'm really happy to be here. Really excited for this opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're looking forward to interviewing you, talking a little bit about your experience. We actually connected with Josh via Instagram earlier this week. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to interviewing him. But before we do, you know what it is. We got our Menace moment. And this week, since it is still Pride Month, and since, we love people of color over here, we're going to do the man, the myth, the legend, the queen, RuPaul. So RuPaul has won Critics' Choice Awards, Billboard Music Awards, and Tony Awards, and is the most awarded POC Primetime Emmy winner with 12 Emmys.
Crazy.
As the most commercially successful drag queen of all time, and probably the most famous drag queen in the world, he's been dubbed the Queen of Drag. Born November 17th, 1960, RuPaul Andre Charles was born and raised in San Diego, although his parents, Ernestine and Irving, were both from Louisiana. He was named by his mother, roux coming from the French word roux, which is a base for many Creole dishes and stews like gumbo and other things. He moved to Atlanta when he was 15 years old, where he studied performing arts. And he worked at the Plaza Theater and had several small media appearances, most notably being a background dancer in the music video for the song Love Shack in 1989. We all know that one. Love Shack, Love Shack. So he's a dancer in there somewhere. So I got to go back. I got to go back and watch that. And let's see here. So after that, he settled in New York and he became a very popular fixture in the LGBT club scene up there. And this is in like the 90s, early 2000s. But he achieved international fame as a drag queen with the release of his debut single, Supermodel You Better Work, which was included on his debut studio album, Supermodel of the World, in 1993. He also became a spokesperson for MAC Cosmetics in 1994 and raised money for the MAC AIDS Fund, and became the first drag queen to land a major cosmetics campaign. He also later received his own talk show on VH1 called The RuPaul Show, which he hosted for over 100 episodes, including icons like Cher, Diana Ross, and Lil' Kim over its tenure. He also talked about it had a lot of comedy skits on it, and then it also was noted for discussing topics such as Black empowerment, female empowerment, misogyny, and liberal politics, which was very unusual for the time. Like basically all the things that Gen Z loves to talk about now was not popular in the 90s, as you can imagine, right? So RuPaul was talking about these things on VH1 in the 90s, which is a big deal. So he was very notable for that and kind of ahead of his time. RuPaul's Drag Race, which we all know, was created in 2009 and has been an international success for 15 seasons and counting. And that's what's won him 12 Emmys. And it has produced several spinoffs and variants of the show that are broadcast around the world. Some of them like RuPaul's All Stars and Secret Celebrity Drag Race. I should have written them down, but I didn't. There's a few different ones. He was also one of Time Magazine's top 100 influential people in 2017. And then, there's a little bit of controversy surrounding him. There was like some environmental stuff where I guess people were mad that he like allowed oil companies to mine oil on his land or something like that. People were upset about that. People would be upset about anything. But then there was also, he came under fire, and I wanted to bring this up because it's important. He came under fire for some discriminatory remarks and actions towards the transgender community on his show Drag Race. He just makes some comments like, if someone who's fully transitioned probably won't be allowed on the show, stuff like that. But the reason I want to bring that up is because he actually apologized for those comments and for the hurt that they caused. And then since then, he has allowed several transgender individuals to participate in the show and to compete on Drag Race. So I thought that was a cool example of how a celebrity should apologize and make amends, because it seems like celebrities always want to be like, I'm sorry if this offended you, or if you felt any offense, that was not my intent. Like, man, shut up. Like, just apologize and move forward. Right. So I like that he did that. And then by pioneering queer representation on television, many believe RuPaul to have essentially revolutionized the portrayal of the LGBTQ plus community on screen. So that is the King/Queen RuPaul.
Dope. Dope.
Yeah, that's the minutes moment for this week. But yeah, I've wanted to learn more about RuPaul for a minute, and so I love doing these minutes moments because we always get to learn a little bit something new about people. Like I never would have learned about. I can never remember her name, but the first Indian woman in space. I did her like a few weeks ago, and did Patty Mink. I think that was her name, Patsy Mink. I did her last week. First woman of color elected to Congress. So it's cool to be able to like take this space and learn about that too. So while y'all are learning, I'm also learning. Yeah.
My wife's gonna be happy because she freaking loves RuPaul.
Oh, for real?
Every week she's watching. Yeah.
That's funny.
So
Well, you have to
she's
tell her to
definitely
listen to
gonna
the
listen to
episode.
this episode.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
She's gonna be fiending for the first 5 minutes.
Well, we started off on a good note. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, you want to introduce yourself, man? And we connected with you earlier this week on Instagram. You made a comment on one of our posts, just like talking about how you. It was actually one of our podcast interviewee from last week, Kimberly Teeter. We interviewed her. She's a psychologist here in Utah, and she. In the clip that we posted, it was about an experience that she'd had with a transracial adoptee here in Utah. And then you made a comment saying that you had grown up as a transracial adoptee and you'd had some interesting experiences. And so I saw that and I was like, oh man, we got to have this dude on the podcast to share his experiences, because that's something that we really want to highlight. It's very prevalent in Utah, and it's starting to become more prevalent like nationwide for kids of another race to be adopted into a family of a different race. And so I think that's something that's important to talk about as it becomes more common. So you just kind of want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do, where you're from, all that good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. First, thanks for having me on here. Like, I discovered you guys probably like maybe 6 months ago.
Oh,
So
wow.
like
Okay.
very,
Wow.
very recent. Yeah.
Good
And
stuff, good stuff.
it's been great. I love seeing y'all just going around campus and like asking people like, you know who this picture is, or like Rosa Parks or like Nelson Mandela, and like nobody knows. I think it's so funny, but it's also like kind of sad.
Yes.
Yeah,
For
sure.
Anyways, so yeah, hello everybody. My name is Josh Wallace. I am at the ripe old age of 30 years old. I am from Southern California, currently living in Los Angeles. Born and raised out here. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I was born and raised in the church. I was actually adopted through the church services, the LDS social services. And I grew up here in Southern California. Currently, I am a full-time sound editor out here in Burbank, and I do all of the sound for TV and film, which is a lot of fun. So I get to see the whole show before everybody else does, and I get to make it, and I'm on the mix stage and stuff, and I get to run into celebrities like RuPaul, which is kind of cool. So
wow.
All comes full circle.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet. I'm married. My wife and I just celebrated 6 years married in March. We have 2 little kitty cats.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I mean, technically, like, we're both adopted. My wife's adopted as well.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, we have a pretty cool adoption story. And I actually asked her on a date just to talk about adoption together, and then we ended up falling in love. So
that's cool. That's
cool.
cool.
Yeah, I went to BYU Hawaii. I did my undergrad there. Studied music, and then I got my master's degree at Berklee College of Music in Valencia, Spain. So I lived out there for a little bit, and then now I'm in LA. So that's a little bit about me.
Love that.
Wow, that's crazy.
I gotta say, I was not expecting you to say you were 30 years old. I was expecting a cool like 23, 24.
Damn, I feel it in my heart, but especially as of late, I've been feeling it in my body. I'm freaking 30.
Really?
The stairs getting a little more difficult.
Yeah, it's like I wake up and my back hurts. It just started like this week, and I'm like,
wow.
I tried to go surfing a couple weeks ago, and I was like, yo, I need to go more often because I get out of shape a lot quicker now. So
wow,
tough.
But
So
thank you for the compliment. I really appreciate it.
for sure. Yeah. Well, cool, man. So just kind of jump into your story. Tell us a little bit about like how you were adopted, and then like what it was like growing up in your family?
Yeah. So my adoption story is, well, I'd like to preface all of my remarks today with just kind of like not like a disclaimer, but like um adoption is a really beautiful thing.
Hmm.
But it's also a really difficult thing to navigate.
Hmm.
And so, some of the experiences that I share, I'm not doing them to like call people out for like being bad. It's
Yeah.
more just to, tell my tell what happens to me
Right.
so other people can relate and recognize if they are in a similar situation, that it's okay to, recognize these good things that happen and also these bad things that happen,
Hmm.
and to, just see them as they are. Because for a long time I didn't. So,
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
so with that, I was adopted at 3 days old. My birth
Wow.
mother was a member of the church, and she was 16 years old when she had
Wow.
me, and I was adopted, yeah, through LDS Social Services. My birth parents were really young. They were in high school. They loved each other. And at that time, with my birth mother being Black, you know, in hearing her experiences, she kind of experienced a lot of kind of hurtful things with church leadership. I remember
Yeah.
just talking to her. Well, kind of spoiler because I've reconnected with my birth parents since. But she experienced a lot of kind of prejudice towards her. I mean, I know there have been other people, young kids having babies when they're young, and
Mhm.
I remember her telling me that she was in a council, like she had to meet with the high council
Oh yeah,
growing up.
Yeah.
disciplinary
Yeah.
council.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were like threatening, like legit threatening to like excommunicate her for having a kid and stuff.
At 16 is
Man,
crazy.
that's
At
why. Yeah, at
Right.
like on top of all
for
of
something
the
that's
things you're dealing with having a kid,
Right.
just having, people do that to you has got to
Hmm.
be really rough. So,
yeah,
um,
that's definitely very traumatic. I've been in a disciplinary council before and I didn't enjoy it. So I can't imagine. And it
really,
wasn't even for like I wasn't threatened with excommunication, so I can't even imagine
mm.
going through that at 16.
They can't catch me. I'm running. You're not gonna sit me
Out.
down. I'm gone. Find me first.
Yeah. So yeah, it was in Southern California, 'cause she was living there at the time. And yeah, my mother and my father, they weren't really expecting me because they had already adopted my brother, who was about 20 months older than I am. And he's mixed as well. And they, I guess, they had their names kind of like on a list
Mhm.
still. And they weren't really, they weren't kind of like expecting to get another kid. But then, my birth mother is the one who picked my parents to raise me.
Okay.
And so they got a call saying, "Hey, we have this kid for you, and we'd love you to come and see him and stuff." And so my mother was the one who picked me up and brought me home, which was really cool. So, but and then growing up, it was myself, my mother, my father, and my older brother.
Mhm.
And my brother's mixed, but he's a lot lighter skinned than I am. I got the color, I got the melanin mostly.
Okay. Okay.
And growing up with that, it was really challenging for me personally. I would look at myself and I knew early on that, you're definitely different from your family. You don't look anything like them. But
Yeah, that was
I
gonna be one of my
see,
first questions actually is like kind of when did you know that you were different? So yeah,
Hmm.
definitely
man,
jump into it.
as like young, I'd say maybe 4.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow, okay.
and I would ask my mom like, "How come I look different than you?" And
Mm.
like,
Mm.
I was just really confused.
What
And my
would you
mother would
say when you?
always
Oh, sorry. I was
No, go
gonna
ahead.
ask, what would she say when you would ask, like, at age 4, why do I look different? I feel these things. Like, how would that conversation look?
Yeah, so like it was my mom was really open about it. My parents, I should say, my parents were very open about it, and they would say, like you were adopted, and they would explain
Mm,
it to me like, you were brought into this world from different people, and they weren't able to raise you, so they wanted to,
mm,
give you to us so that we can raise you. They
mm.
didn't give you away because they didn't love you. It's not like they
Oh,
didn't
wow.
want you. You were
Mhm.
always wanted, and you're our son now. And my mom always promised me growing up, she was like, you know, because I wanted to find them. I was like, I need to know who these people are. Like,
Yeah.
I need to, see myself in somebody else, because
Yeah.
my whole life I've
Mm,
like really struggled with my identity. And
Mm.
my mom would always tell me, like once you're old enough and after you serve a mission, I would be more than happy to, help you find your birth parents, because my adoption was a closed adoption. So I
mm,
didn't get all of the information of who my birth parents were and all that stuff.
right. Wow. And
Yeah.
how you kinda mentioned it, about the identity, but, like, how was it connecting to, like, Black culture, like, as a transracial adoptee? How did that look for you, and, like, how's that process been for you?
It didn't, man. Frankly, it
Uh-huh.
was not popping.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my brother, he's half, right? He fully embraced it. And honestly,
Mm,
like I feel like growing up, we kind of bash on it a little bit. But I think that deep down I was secretly jealous
mm,
um of him being able to embrace, his Black culture and stuff. And I just couldn't do it because, for me, all of the Black, you know, culture, or not even culture, but like, the Black people that I would see growing up would be in the news.
mm,
Mm.
Mostly. I mean, in the town that I
mhm,
grew up, it was mostly Hispanic Latino community. So
mhm.
very few people in the Black community out there.
Wow.
Even still to this day, is there's not really that many in the town that I grew up in. But I'd turn on the TV or the news and I would see, here's an armed robber, and like they would show his mugshot or like a picture of him, this Black man,
Mm.
he's the
Mhm.
burglar, he's the criminal, like let's get him. Or in shows it'd be like, oh, he's the gangster, he's the urban
Right,
one.
right.
And growing up, being in my family, being told every day, like, you're our son, we love you,
Mhm.
and seeing myself in the mirror, I would see, the faces of the burglar or the
Right.
criminal,
Right.
and stuff like that. And I, I, it got so bad that I like didn't want to be Black,
Wow.
Mm.
and like I didn't consider myself Black. Like I thought it was a mistake.
Right.
Okay.
Shoot.
Yeah.
And that's it, and it got so bad. I remember when I was a kid, I'd say I was like 8 or 9 or maybe 10. I remember just being so upset about it. And I remember looking in the mirror sobbing because I hated what I saw.
Man.
And I remember grabbing a washcloth,
Oh,
putting a bunch of soap on it, and started to just rub my skin to try and make it white.
Mm.
wow.
And I got even more frustrated because nothing was happening, and I was just
Right.
praying to God, like, why'd you make me this way? Like, I don't look like my family.
Mm,
And it was really,
mm.
really difficult in
Wow.
those younger years, definitely.
Right,
Yeah, for
right,
sure,
right,
for
right.
sure. And like, were there outside influences that kind of added to that? Like you mentioned, you see a lot of the Black people that you saw were on the news. Were there experiences that you had with like family members or at school or with
Mhm.
friends that kind of added to that conflict of identity?
A couple times. I mean, I remember growing up, there was this guy who would come over to our house, and he was Black, and he was really fun and cool, but I was way too young to kind of
Mm,
connect to him in any way.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of the influences that I had growing up of Black people in the community that I was introduced to, I didn't really want to connect with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
in my head, this is gonna sound bad, but like in my head, I was black just on the outside. Like I
Mhm.
wasn't
Yeah.
black on the
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and I would even I would call myself an Oreo. And like,
Right.
to my friends and everybody knew, like, oh yeah, Josh, he's an Oreo. He just looks black, but he's basically white.
Mhm.
And we would all joke around and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
like, looking back now, like that, like thinking that way has really it's put a
Yeah.
number on me, man. Like
Oh, yeah.
Imagine.
stuff
And I
like that is just and it's just me doing that. I feel like me separating myself from who I was, and
Yeah.
me trying to kind of cope with it in a comedic way. And
Yeah.
it got so bad that I would kind of play my blackness as like a joke.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, and
I've been there for sure. I've talked about it before where like I tried to make myself into like the palatable black guy, where it's like, oh, he's
mhm,
funny and he's easy to be around because he doesn't mind the racist jokes and this and that. So it's probably a little bit different, but I would imagine a lot of black people who would hear this, or even
mhm.
just people of color who have been in environments where there's a lot of whiteness around them, I would imagine they probably have a very like similar experience in some ways.
Yeah, it was really hard. I'm a people pleaser naturally, so that
Mm.
doesn't help either because
Yeah.
I just, I go with the flow. I would just go with the flow and not raise conflict in order to keep the peace at all costs.
Right.
And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
yeah, when stuff would happen, when people would say, um, people would just touch my hair randomly, or when
Mhm.
people would say, "Oh my gosh, like your lips are big," and like stuff like,
Right.
I would just be
That's
like,
out of
"Yeah, it is
pocket.
Oh,
big. Isn't
for
it
real.
funny? Ha ha ha."
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Which that's a wildly out of pocket thing to say to anybody. Like, I guess now we're a little bit
yeah.
more correct than we used to be, but never in my life would I go up to somebody and be like, "Wow, you're such and such is like your nose is huge or your lips
Right.
are big." Like,
Right. Out of pocket.
why would you do that? That's
And you
just out
got
of
large
pocket. Yeah.
ears. Okay, so I don't know what to tell you.
Right. It just seems like a lot
No,
of
right.
a lot of kids, like white kids, just have like
Mhm.
this feeling like with especially when it comes to dealing with black people, there's like this license to just like do or say whatever they want. And I've heard other stories of similar things where it's like you just grab somebody's hair or you just infringe on their personal space. As a black person or as a white person to a black person, that's just a very interesting like mindset to be in, like that mindset of
Mhm.
I can just do whatever I want or say whatever I want to
Yeah.
this person. Yeah.
And you know what? It's not just like white kids, it's also adults. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
and it's not it's still going on. I mean, I
Mhm.
I can say full honesty, like on Sunday, was it last Sunday? Yeah, I was teaching elders quorum. On Sunday, I was teaching elders quorum,
Uh-huh.
and I was writing on the board, and I had my hair pulled back because it's at this awkward length where it gets in my eyes sometimes.
Yep.
So I like just pulled the top back part, so it was kind of
Mm.
like up like this a little bit.
Mhm.
And as I was writing on the board, someone in elders quorum was like, "Wow, look at that head of hair," and then everybody was like chuckling, and I was like, "Is this really happening?"
Mm.
And they were like, I mean, they're probably jealous because they're, half of them are bald or whatever, but
Yeah. They must have
but
went to
like,
BYU.
No, right.
it's like, yeah, it's like, are we really that
Yeah.
insensitive and disconnected to like we can
Yeah.
just
Mm.
say stuff like that and not expect anything to,
Mm.
to get away with it? Like,
Mhm.
people need to understand that, their words really matter. And
Right.
yeah, I was just appalled, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it's still going on today. So.
And let me
Mhm.
ask you a question. How, obviously we talked about how when you were a child and when you're young, the things that you kind of like internalized about your own self and your blackness and your identity, how has kind of that affected you to the day as,
Mhm.
a ripe 30-year-old slash how have you kind of like
Mhm.
taken that
Ripe.
worked he mentioned that before, right? So now he's a ripe 30-year-old forever. But how have you kind of like destigmatized that for yourself, coming to your age now versus when you were a child?
Yeah, what's the deconstruction look
Yeah, how's
like?
that look?
You know, it's been ongoing, and it started when I moved away from home.
Mm,
And it's been about a little over 10 years of just slowly going at it, and in most recent years it's really picked up a lot. It's been, getting out away from my hometown, away from, my family, and just being on my own, and just being left to be myself.
mhm.
Uh and also to meet people from around the world, and meet fellow black people, I guess, everywhere. Like it's been being able to see people from all walks of life, and to live around the world in different places, and also just to be able to like sit with myself, and see different aspects of myself and other people, and especially in black people. I mean, you see this flag of Bob Marley up here.
Yeah, I saw that.
This guy was my hero.
Mm,
I
mm.
remember growing up, I got a Bob Marley CD when I was like 14 for Christmas. I'd never heard reggae before ever in my life. And someone gave me a Bob Marley CD, and I was like, "Who is this? Like, I've seen this guy everywhere, but I don't know who he is." And I kind of shied away from him because he was black, and I didn't want to connect with that. I just wanted to
Mhm.
keep with my Toby Keith. I wanted to keep with my country music, with my you know, my with my yellow card, pop punk bands. And I wanted to keep that. And someone showed me Bob Marley, and I listened to his music, and, seeing a mixed race, you know, black man, singing songs about unity, and singing songs about love, and about, the Bible, and biblical verses in all of his music. It was really, and seeing him just comfortable with who he is. His hair, it's all natural. He's just so happy in his skin, and he was just so happy to be him. Like, he really helped me to accept myself and accept my blackness, definitely.
Mm.
Mm,
Interesting.
that's
Interesting.
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So in that process of learning to accept your blackness, and just kind of becoming more you, what were some ways like growing up that you felt invalidated
Yeah, I
in
was
that
gonna ask about this.
experience? Like when we had posted that clip on Instagram, you said this feels too familiar to me. So like kind of share a little bit with us about like times that you maybe felt invalidated or felt discouraged from seeking out
Mm,
aspects of your culture.
mhm.
Yeah. I'm gonna talk about, let's see. So
You want the tea?
I wanted to
it's
ask
a
this.
lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, there was well, this one's kind of weird. So there was one day, um I was like, you know what? I want to like really embrace like my blackness. And with my sort of whitewashed brain, I put on I put on like a white tee, and I put on a do-rag, and I was totally on incorrectly. And I sagged my shorts down, and I remember going in my room, and I remember like turning on the hip hop station, and I was like, "Yeah, I can do this." And then I only did it for like 2 seconds, and I was like, "You know what? This is really hard for me to do."
Mm.
A very incorrect way to,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, but it was all the
accept
Yeah,
stereotypes
that's
yourself.
though,
like what you
like
But
knew.
yeah,
it was what you knew. Yeah.
Mhm.
it was exactly what I knew. It was exactly what I knew. And also, growing up too in my home and in my community, it was all of the off-colored, just random jokes that would happen.
Mm,
That was like a reminder of, and it's like, to me, stuff like this would happen, and it would be like, oh, like they see me as black.
mm,
So
mhm.
like I remember one time, I was I was passing the sacrament, and I had since discovered Bob Marley, so I started growing out my hair, right?
Mhm.
And it used to be a fro, but then I used to just like not pick it out, and I would just let my natural curl pattern form.
Okay.
And it got really big at the time. It was like really out to here, and so I was passing the sacrament with this big fro, and I remember a member of the bishopric pulled me aside, one time, and he was like, "Hey, like, how's it going? Like, good to see you." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm doing good. Everything's great." And he was like, "Hey, so, you know, everything's good with you. I just wanted to say, I love your hair. It looks really great. But I noticed that, when you pass in the sacrament and, your hair starts to, kind of wobble and bob and stuff." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, 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 because my hair's long." And, and then he said, "I know that if we were in maybe Jamaica or like in the
Oh
tropics,
no.
it would be totally okay.
No, that's crazy.
But I know that to some of the members, it could be a little distracting from them, to feel the spirit just watching your hair bob. So maybe you can,
Right, because hair
take care of
brings
your hair a little bit."
I'm sorry, but if you can't feel the spirit because you see somebody's hair wobbling, like
right.
you're in the wrong church.
Maybe you
Like,
never felt the spirit in the first
right?
place.
Like if that's all it
Yeah.
takes for you to not feel, because listen, I done sat through some crazy sacrament meetings. It felt
I've seen a lot of white people busted. Okay,
right.
so if the spirit wasn't there, they wasn't there for that.
That's crazy to say that your hair wobbling was enough to
Yeah.
get the
Right.
spirit away.
Yeah. And, me, I was getting that stuff all the time. I was just
Wow.
always getting course correction from mostly white people,
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
And so I was like, "Okay, totally fine." So the next day I just shaved my head.
Oh my
Oh
gosh, that's
man.
painful.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, growing up, I would always kind of like shave my head
Right.
Yeah.
all the time because I would just get sick
Right.
of my hair. But like, I remember this time it was different because I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to affect people's spirituality during the sacrament. It's the most important part of the meeting. It's like
Right.
I got to do my part to make
Mhm.
sure that everybody else is comfortable.
That's
Yeah.
great. Do
That's
you?
wild.
Yeah.
Really
You got
quick,
it. You got it.
to kind of to explain that a little bit more, like first of all, there's like the racial aspect of that, which is that bishop made you feel like something that was natural to you was a bad thing to the point where you wanted to shave it. But on top of that, like for black people, hair is a sacred thing. Like you look at Bob
Yeah.
Marley, like his hair was a part of him.
Yeah.
The whole barbershop experience. Like I didn't grow up
Mhm.
going to barbershop at all. Like my dad just made me cut my hair. Like I always had a shaved head. That's why I got these locks now.
Yeah, me
But
too.
it's like a sacred experience. Like growing locks that's a sacred experience. For black women, it's even more so. Like for black men, we got the barbershop, we got our hair care routines. You see Sebastian over here with curls, right?
Yeah.
But then for black women, it's a whole other experience where like the way that they take care of their hair and protect it, or they'll do a big chop, or like they'll there's this movement towards more natural hair patterns and like, all these different kinds of things. But like hair for black people is a very sacred thing.
Mhm.
And
Definitely.
it
Yeah.
grows toward the sun, like naturally. That's what our hair
Mhm.
does. It grows directly toward the sun. So yeah, for him to see your natural hair and just
Right.
be like, oh no, this is distracting. This is driving the spirit of God away. Like that's a
Yeah.
very problematic thought process to have.
Yeah.
But what were you
Yeah.
gonna say?
Yeah. I was just gonna ask. I would imagine so, but I just wanted you to talk about it a little bit. But were there moments that you can remember where you had like there was a racist comment made, joke made to you while your family was with you, and nobody was there to defend you, right? Like as a child, I don't think you should defend yourself necessarily or have to defend yourself.
Mm.
But was there kind of a moment like that where you felt like, dang, I have nobody here to defend me?
Yeah. It's actually come from family members.
Mm.
Um, I remember, and it's like it's just like it's little things that they just happened,
Right.
and I was in this mindset. I didn't really understand. I didn't get a proper explanation of half the jokes that were going on, you
Yeah.
Mhm.
know?
A lot
So,
of times they
like,
don't sink in until you're older.
Yeah.
exactly, like, looking back, I mean, even, like, this year it clicked, like, some of the stuff that happened. Like, I
Right.
remember I remember, you know, saying, one of my family members, I would, because I was, like, really skinny as a
Mhm.
kid, there would be this pose that they would be like, "Okay, do your Ethiopian poster child pose."
Oh,
And I
What?
would, like,
what?
just, like, suck in my
What?
stomach and, like,
Oh
show
my!
my ribs,
That's
and it was
crazy.
like a joke that would happen. Yeah, from, like, family members doing that stuff, and it was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, ha, 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 so funny," or like, "Okay, like,
Right.
now,
Oh my.
we're gonna when you see this family member, don't just say yes, family members, say yes, family member massa, sir.
Oh my God.
Oh,
What the fuck?
Yeah.
oh,
Oh my.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And
oh,
honestly, like
What?
looking back on these things, I know that they didn't mean ill, but like they also didn't consider like what that would do to me,
Mhm.
you
yeah.
know?
I mean,
That's baffling.
at best, that's borderline malicious. Like at best.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's
100%.
that's
It
hard.
really
That's
is.
hard.
Yeah.
It's hard too
Yeah.
because when you're a kid, and it's like your older family. Like I'm biracial, right? So I got white family,
Mhm,
and they're
mhm,
from Texas. So and I don't talk to most of them, so they're interesting.
mhm,
Anyway, so I hear you with like hear you. So it's interesting though because when you're a kid, right? It's like your natural reaction. I feel like at least for me, and I can imagine for you as well. Kind of what you're talking about is like you laugh things off.
Yeah.
Whether about race or whatever it's about, they're like, "Oh, you're getting a little fat," and you're like, "Ha ha ha," and you go cry in your room. You know what I mean?
mhm.
So it's kind of like the same idea, though. It's like, but in those moments, like, what else does a 15-year-old kid do when your uncle or aunt or whoever family member is like, do your Ethiopian pose?
Mhm,
Like, you're supposed to be my protector, right? Like, you're supposed to
mhm,
have my best interest in mind,
Yeah.
mhm,
and so you lead with that kind of hope. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
mhm.
That's just
And when it
wow.
comes to family, you always want to assume the best. Like
Right.
you would
Yeah.
Yeah.
you would never automatically assume that a family member means you harm. So for them to say something like that, it
Mhm.
creates like a duality inside yourself because it's like, okay, well, this person is supposed to love me, but they're
Right.
saying things like this, and in the moment, it's like, oh, I don't, it doesn't feel
Mhm.
right, but I'm just gonna go with it, because
That's
Right.
these people
exactly
love
the
me.
sentiment. That was the exact sentiment. Every time I do the pose, every time I'd flare my lips out, every time I would, say yes, family member massa, sir,
Man,
it was like I didn't know because it wasn't explained, but like it was like,
Right.
hey, do it. It's funny, do it. And so I'd do it, and they were laughing, but I just didn't understand.
yeah,
Yeah.
And
they
like
were
now
laughing
that
at you, not with you.
Right.
yeah, because well, I mean, I was laughing with them on the outside, but
Right.
like on the inside, I was like, man, I still don't understand what is so funny. And the
Yeah.
last thing I
Mm,
would think of was like, this isn't
mm.
racist, because it's my
Mhm.
family.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
I love them, they love me. It can't be. It can't be
Yeah.
malicious. So
man.
That's crazy.
yeah, stuff
Wow.
like this and stuff like that. It's like people just need to understand that transracial adoption is hard enough
Mm,
Yeah,
on its own for the parents as
mm.
well for the kids and for, and the whole family. It's not easy.
Yeah.
You're dealing with, you're dealing with issues and things that people don't necessarily really take into account. And, my parents that they didn't know, like and my family members, they didn't know, like they were growing, they were just trying their best in a way. But, it's just, my hope is that, someone can hear this and,
Mhm.
to people who unfortunately do have a connection with stories like these growing up, I hope that they
Yeah.
can, listen and say, you know what, this isn't okay. And I have a right to not feel comfortable with this. And,
Mm.
or even to like, talk to your family members about it and uh, maybe have some healing go on. So see a therapist about it. That's what I'm currently doing. So,
yeah,
Have you talked
yeah.
to your family? Like, have you talked to them or have they recognized it at all, your parents, other family members? Like, recognize their kinda role in those stories and that pain? Have they educated themselves? Like, how has that looked like for your
So,
family?
yeah. So I recently talked to my brother. He's out in Utah. And we just had to talk about some of the stuff that went down growing up that we weren't okay with.
Mm,
But some of my other family members, I have with a few, but there's still some that I would like to have a conversation about. Sometimes I remember a few conversations didn't go as well, or they went well, but then there was some sort of falling out.
mm,
But I know that, there's definitely still some healing left to be done, not just for me, as I guess I would say, the victim in
Right.
this
Yeah.
scenario.
For sure.
But also for them to recognize that, even though stuff like that, even those things like that were said, situations like that happened, like you can recognize, like you said, you can recognize that it was a bad thing, and you
Yeah.
can course correct, and you can, do better.
Yeah.
Mm.
Man.
So,
So ideally, you mentioned your family and your parents. Ideally, when a family adopts a child from another race, ideally
mm,
you would want those parents to kind of know what they're getting into. But I feel
Mm.
like one thing that I've run into a lot, um, because when I first got to Utah, I had never really seen a transracial adoptive family until I moved to Utah.
mm,
And I remember
Hmm.
thinking, well, like these black kids are really in difficult spaces, um, because it's clear that they don't really fit in, but they're trying to fit in, but it's creating a lot of harm. It's causing a lot of harm.
mm,
So ideally, you would want parents who adopt a child of another race, especially black, to kind of know what they're getting into, to know how to talk to their child, to know how to teach their child what they need to know. And it sounds like your parents did a good job of talking to you about how you were adopted, how your biological family still loved you, but they just weren't in a position to raise you. But when it came to mitigating racial trauma or preventing racial harm,
mm.
um, it sounds like maybe there just wasn't the knowledge on how to do that or the awareness to do that. So, what advice would you give to transracial adoptive parents or to any white family that's thinking about adopting a child of another race? What advice would you give to them?
Mm.
That's a really good question. Um, I know for a fact that, growing up, my family wasn't perfect. I don't think any family is
Right,
perfect.
right, right.
And that's not, I'm not just saying that just to like downplay like what happened. I'm just saying that, like, it could be the most ideal picture perfect family. There's always going to be some sort of problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that my parents really did their best. Also, because I was so ashamed of, my outside appearance, like who I was, my blackness, I was very resistant when my parents did make efforts to try and, introduce like black culture aspects or, certain things for me.
Mm,
I remember specifically too one time, my mom was talking to a black mother at an elementary school, and she was talking about like taking care of my hair.
Mm.
And I remember hearing the conversation, and I was like, I don't want my hair to be, you know, black
mm,
hair. I want
mhm.
my hair to be like yours, mom. Like, I'll just wash my hair every day and, do what I need to do. And I remember my mom bought this African oil for my scalp.
Mhm.
And I remember like looking at the bottle, and I was like, I don't want this. I don't want it at all, because I didn't want to, associate with my blackness at all.
Yeah.
It was there was some stuff going
Yeah.
on top,
Yeah.
man. Like, it was pretty wild. Um, so that's kind of a long explanation of answering the question. What I would say to families of transracial adopted kids or parents who are looking to adopt transracially, I will say this. You know, the one thing that parents are really good at is loving their child. And with transracial adopted kids, you have to love them, and you have to really be patient with them. And above all, like, it really does help to give them spaces where they can, be around people who look like them.
Yeah.
It really does help.
Mm.
And, um, you know, if you're gonna adopt a child and they happen to, if maybe they're Japanese, or maybe they're, um, Native American or Black, educate yourself on Black culture, on whatever culture and whatever language that they come from,
Mhm.
and don't be afraid to, introduce that to them and provide spaces where that they can be around that, because it'll really, really help.
Yeah.
And above all, like, be patient and like really listen to how your kids are feeling, because for me there was so much going on, and it was really hard for me to articulate my words because I didn't want to offend my parents. I didn't want to offend anybody. But there was a lot going on in my head and in my heart that I just didn't feel like I could get out. So really give space so that you can listen to your kids, so that they can, you can hear what they're needing or what they're feeling, and then you can take necessary action. And finally, just don't be racist. Like, don't say racist jokes to your kids, even if it's funny.
Right.
Like, that does so much damage and so much harm to your little kids. And half
Yeah.
the time, I mean, I didn't even know. All of the time, I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I want to kind of go more into that. You said don't be racist, which you think would be just like simple advice. Don't be racist.
Right.
But
Mhm.
could you go more into detail about what you mean by that? Because I feel like a lot of people will hear this and say, "Oh, I'm not
Yes.
racist. I have a black child," or "I'm not racist. I
Right.
do this," or "I
Mhm.
listen to Tupac, so I'm not racist." Like, tell us a little bit more what you mean by "don't be racist,"
Right.
because I would imagine if you went and talked to your family members, none of
Mhm.
them would say that what they were doing was racist. Telling you to call your family member "Massa Sir," they'd be, "Oh,
Mhm.
that's not racist. That's just a joke. Oh, I didn't mean
Mhm.
anything by it." So kind of like go into more detail with that,
Yes. Yes.
please.
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
Mm.
like, poking fun at, like, making jokes that highlight their ethnical racial differences. I mean, it's one thing. The comedians and stuff, like, they've done that, like, since the dawn of comedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and you look at Mad TV. It's like some of the stuff that was going on in Mad TV was like it was
Was
pretty
wild.
it was pretty wild stuff. It definitely would not air today. Um, but, like, making jokes where, like, their differences are like the brunt of the joke,
Mhm.
that does so much harm, and that does so much damage. I've had so many jokes like that thrown my way from family members, from friends, from, yeah, just everybody in my community. And instead of getting hurt by it and offended by it, I just, maybe part of me, like, kind of chose to not look into it and just laugh along, because it was easier, instead of being like,
Protection.
wait,
Yeah.
what do you mean? Like,
Mm.
what do you mean? Ethiopian poster child. What does that even mean? Can you explain that to me? Because I want to
Yeah.
laugh too, because I don't understand.
Right.
Yeah, and because, like, kids are so pure, and they're so precious, and they're just filled with, just, they just don't know these things. They're not aware of these things, and I feel like it can be heightened, really, in a transracial adoption family scenario. You
Yeah.
got to really be careful with how you say things, how you talk about other races and ethnic groups.
Yeah.
It's like, and kids are sponges. Like, they absorb those things.
Mm.
And so it's, you gotta just really be kind of like what, Russell M. Nelson said. We have to be the people who lead out actions of prejudice and, racism. And doing that is, learning about who your kid is, what their ethnicity is, what their culture is, and protecting that for them. Like, having them, making it so that they see it in a beautiful, glorious light for what it truly is, not the stereotypical racist bad things that people throw around and have thrown around for forever. It's like, being black isn't a bad thing. Being
Yeah.
Asian isn't a bad thing. There's beautiful cultures and beautiful history there that should be amplified and, taken upon ourselves.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Hope
Yeah.
that answers the question.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it definitely does.
Mm.
It definitely does. So to kind of go along with that, for you, I know that you're like, you're still in that journey, but
Mhm, mhm.
it's like a constant thing. So for you, when was it that things kind of, I guess, clicked for you? Like, when did you kind of start to separate yourself from that idea of I don't want to be black, or I want to make myself palatable? And like, when did you start moving into a space where you're more comfortable with your blackness?
I would honestly say probably BYU Hawaii.
Hmm.
Being at that campus, first off, that campus, have you guys been?
No,
Yes.
I haven't.
That campus is special. I don't care what anybody says. Like, that is a magical, beautiful place. Being there and being around, surrounded with culture. When I was there was over 70 countries there in the
Mm.
student body. So I was in class with people from all over the world. And, I was in environments where, the minority groups in America were like highlighted and like really praised and like, really put up in Hawaii. Especially I worked at the Polynesian Cultural Center too, which is like a tourist kind of like Disneyland for Polynesia. I don't want to say that, but it's a place where they showcase a lot of the culture
Yeah.
of the Polynesian islands through song and dance and cultural demonstrations and luau's and stuff like that. And I had the opportunity to work there, and being able to, well, I had the privilege and the honor of working there, and being able to represent cultures that I wasn't a part of, and seeing how much pride that people took in from being Samoan or being Hawaiian or even like being Korean or being Indonesian or being Indian. It was really beautiful to see people just take pride in who they were, and that started to be like, oh, like maybe I could be okay with like being myself, like I can definitely start to, yeah, I'm black, that's just who I am, and that's not a bad thing. It's actually a pretty dope thing, you know what I mean? So like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love it. And Bob Marley definitely helped too, listening to his music. He sings songs like until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance than the color of his eyes, like, and like,
Mhm.
keep your culture, grow your dreadlocks, don't be afraid of the wolf pack. He's singing a lot of stuff to empower Africans and people of the Africa diaspora.
Mhm.
And that, coupled with my experience at BYU Hawaii and being out on my own, really helped me to embrace, like, okay, I'm starting to feel really more comfortable in my skin, and it's been really, really great. And also reconnecting with my birth family helped a lot as well.
I can
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so just wanted to ask, kind of on the same idea of advice, but what advice would you have for the transracial adoptees that
Mm.
may be going through a similar situation that you went through previously, or
Mm.
maybe on their journey of finding their identity as well? But like, kind of all in all, what would your advice be for them?
Yeah, great question. Probably the most important question in this podcast.
Yeah. Tell
Um,
them how to survive. How to make it
Right.
yeah,
through.
yeah. It's okay to be different. Just because you are different from your family members, it doesn't mean that you're less than. Um, it doesn't make you less of a person. It doesn't make you less of a family member. And even though sometimes, in the community, or hopefully not, but maybe sometimes within your own family, things will be said that target you and your differences. Um, you know, those things aren't okay. And you honestly, you need to just remember that God made you in their image, and you are beautiful the way you are, and you're perfect the way you are. And it's because of your differences that you were put on this earth and in this family, is because you have something to bring and you have something to add to their lives, but also to your life as well. And don't be afraid to embrace it. you know Look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that you love you, and get a list of affirmations going, and just do something that explores your identity, that helps you to feel just a little bit more comfortable in your own skin every day. So that's what I would say.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that.
Love that. And thank you for sharing. We appreciate it. I learned some good stuff today.
Yeah, for sure.
And we really do appreciate you coming on the podcast and just talking with us, sharing your experience a little bit. And man, it's an interesting dynamic. I'm just learning more and more, like every day, how much Blackness varies from person to person, right? Like we all have our different journeys and different ways of like finding, and we all have like our different backgrounds too. So like my background, I grew up in the church. I was very much surrounded by white people, but then I also had like very like ultra Black parents, right? Like we were like hyper Black, like we had pictures of Black historical figures on the wall. So for me, it was like this kind of being cut off from Black culture, but also being immersed in it at home, but like through the lens of the church. And then for you, you got this experience of growing up Black in a white family and, feeling uncomfortable with your Blackness until reaching a certain point and then being able to kind of move into that. So everybody's experience is different. And I love learning about that. And I love that like social media and podcasting and all these different, sources give us ways to connect with different kinds of Blackness and realize that it's not just what we see on TV or what we see in the news.
Definitely. Recently that's been my thing. I'd say since 2020, honestly, like as recent as that. It's been seeing that like, Blackness is kind of like there's all different facets to it. It's like it's a beautiful kaleidoscope of like different people and different ways of expressing and feeling and being, and seeing people with their experiences, and being able to just kind of hold their own and still say, yeah, I'm Black, but I'm not like this, but I'm still Black. That's been really liberating to me as well. I've recently been in a surf group for Black people. It's called they're out here and they're trying to rewrite the history of Black people and water, and especially in surfing. And
Right.
That's cool.
It's been really empowering just to be with them and serve with them. I volunteer with them and just enjoy and just be happy being ourselves together. Having those spaces where we can just be ourselves is so special and has helped me so much. So
yeah, I gotta ask, how close are you to Huntington Beach?
I used to live in Huntington Beach.
Okay, because I know a Black dude that lives there that's also a surfer. He's got locks too. He's a little bit older. I think he's like late 30s, maybe early 40s.
What's his name?
I don't know if I want to say it on the podcast.
That's cool. That's cool.
When the recording stops, I'll ask you about him.
For sure.
You may know him because I don't. It's not too many Black dudes with locks that surf.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look him up online.
I think I know who you're talking about because I used to volunteer with this surf school out there, and they primarily do help people in the Black community to surf in Huntington Beach, and but yeah, and like there's. And it's been so cool to like discover that like there's so many different clubs of like things that people do, but we're doing it together in our community. And being, like I said, kind of broken record me, being in those spaces has brought so much healing and so much joy. And a recent quote that I've been seeing that just really gets me in my feels is like, we are living our ancestors' wildest dreams when we're together, when we're expressing and just being joyful, whether we're surfing or knitting or dancing on the dance
floor. Listen to the yellow card. Shoot.
Listen to the yellow card together, dude. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, love that, man. Well, yeah, thank you, Josh, for sharing your experience. We appreciate it. Thank you for teaching us and teaching our listeners, and we're looking forward to getting your episode out there. Yeah. We're gonna close it out with our recommendations for the week. I'll go first, and then just recommend something that you enjoy, something that you've done recently, whatever it is. But I got a couple of recommendations this week. Cut the camera on myself.
Couple of recommendations.
Couple of recommendations.
Hold on.
First recommendation. I don't even know if it's still valid, right? But over the weekend, I went to McDonald's late at night because it was the only thing that was open. It was like 1 a.m. And I saw on the billboard that they had an advertisement for Grimace's birthday.
Oh,
I don't really know a lot about Grimace. He was like an old McDonald's mascot or whatever.
Yeah, man, I remember Grimace.
And they had a birthday.
Me.
They had a birthday shake for Grimace, and it was like a purple shake. And I tried that thing, and I swear to you, that was the best shake I've had in a long time. It was just, I don't know what was in it. It basically tasted like they took like Captain Crunch, like Fruit Crunch. What was it called? The Fruit Loops? No. Like it's Captain Crunch.
Captain Crunch
Berry
fruity
Crunch.
one. Oh, yeah.
It tastes like they took Captain Crunch Berry
yeah.
Crunch and encapsulated it in an ice cream shake, and it was delicious. So I don't know how long of a time that was for.
Okay.
It might have been a limited time only thing, but if you can go to McDonald's and get you a Grimace shake, that thing was delicious. Secondly, I've watched it before, but I just finished binging Avatar: The Last Airbender again. Highly recommend that show. It's on Netflix right now. I think, in my opinion, that's one of like the greatest like cartoon character arc shows out there, at least American made. I know there's some really good anime that got great stuff going on, but American made cartoons, I say that's probably one of the best ones I have watched personally. So Avatar: The Last Airbender, check that out. It's on Netflix. Those are my 2 recommendations for the week. Sebastian, what you got?
Okay, I was trying to think of what mine would be, but I have one. My whole life, I was not a fan of golf. Whole life, I just wasn't for me. It's very slow, like 18 holes a day. It's a lot of days. Anyway, it just was never for me. I never connected. Besides my dad's love for Tiger Woods, that's the only thing that I was connected to. But this last weekend, I was recommended to watch the Netflix show Full Swing. Phenomenal, bro. I'm a golf fan. I follow PGA on Instagram, PGA Tour on Instagram. I follow like 10 accounts now, just like that. The series did it for me. I'm a fan.
Full Swing.
Wow.
I mean, you're right. Like I started looking up stats. I'm like, let me look at this. Tiger Woods. Let me tell you one stat real quick. And this, I'm telling you, it's gonna put you on golf. So all these golfers, I didn't know this until this weekend. But golfers are rated, like ranked in the world, right? Like there's a #1 best golfer right now in the world, and it'll change, right? Like depending on how they're playing, right? Tiger Woods was the #1 ranked golfer for 5 years straight, 281 weeks. The person closest to him was only ranked 96 weeks, the #1 golfer.
That's wild.
Isn't that 3 times the time limit?
That's
#1.
wild.
That's
I'm a
crazy.
golf fan, bro, and Tiger's the GOAT. He's done some controversial stuff, but he's still the GOAT.
Yeah, I mean, okay, what did he do that was controversial besides like
Just cheating on his
having
wife?
Yeah,
That's the most controversial.
I mean, they would have made
that
you
he's
think
done.
that like he murdered somebody. The way,
but
that
why
they
was he
crucified-
villainized?
Right.
I thought he like killed somebody, bro.
Right? Like, yes, you should
Affair
you should
bad,
not cheat on
right,
your wife.
sure.
However,
It was
But
with
dang.
a lot of women, if I remember correctly.
I don't
he was in
remember
the
it being
screens,
one.
huh?
Probably, but still, like
He was the #1 best golfer. I mean,
they acted like he was the only athlete to ever cheat.
right?
Like in
Like
his-
Kobe. Come on.
I remember it
D-Wade.
being on the news, like on ESPN,
No,
on CNN,
everything.
on Fox, on
Yeah.
MSNBC. Like I remember, and I wasn't
8
that
o'clock
old.
news.
Right, it was everywhere. Like they kept
It
showing
really
him like
was.
pulling out of his driveway. Then he like crashes the SUV or something.
Bro,
That was
it was bad.
yeah,
It was
okay.
yeah. So I say
Man.
controversial. I feel like because in that time it was so bad.
Yeah.
Now, like, who hasn't cheated practically that's
Mhm.
famous?
I mean, we
Besides
haven't.
LeBron. Right. We have
Black men don't cheat. Right.
Right.
Right. But
Not Tiger, but yeah.
Oh, that was for me, right? Yes, right.
Yeah,
sorry.
I was hoping. Yeah. I was like, oh no,
Josh is
did
like,
we
yeah.
stumble?
I was like, oh,
Unless
that's
your wife
me.
listens to the podcast.
It's a touchy subject.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. But so, Josh, what's your recommendation, bro?
yeah. So, all right. You know what? Have y'all had some coconut water recently?
No,
not.
it's been a while.
You know,
Long
if you're not
while.
allergic to coconuts, drink some freaking coconut water. That stuff is beautiful. It does so much, and every time I drink it, I just feel refreshed. It's got natural electrolytes in it, and try some coconut water.
Okay.
Also, since we got 2 locked up brothers in here, if you're on the fence about getting your locks done, I say just do it.
Come on, yes,
Come on
get
over.
them locks.
Come on over.
Join the Lock Squad.
Well, now we have it.
Those are my recs.
Drink coconut water with locks.
Mhm.
Very surfer of you.
Yeah. Well, actually,
to recommend coconut water.
Oh man.
yeah.
Cool. Love that. That's a great way to end it. And with that, we appreciate y'all, and we will catch you next week.
Bye-bye.